everybody, Sam Amico, Hoops Wire live on 330 to go. How are you, and how about those Cleveland Browns? Right now, they own the AFC North, right? They beat the Ravens, they beat the Steelers, they lost the Bengals, but that's okay. 2-1 in the AFC North. 0-100 against everybody else. Anyway, this being, of course, a Cavaliers show. Yes, do not bother me during Browns games. Everybody knows that. I watch the Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers alone. You know why? Because I'm a basket case of emotions during those games, as I've so often said. And with the Browns, 18-6, you're feeling good. Then all of a sudden, Pittsburgh, who can't score touchdowns, Pittsburgh won 2 games this year without scoring a touchdown. They won those games. So I'm like, well, they're not going to score touchdowns. In the blink of an eye, the Steelers take the lead. Then Jameis Winston throws an interception. Then what happens? Then the Steelers they are like a 3-and-out with a 12-yard punt. They could have put me into punt. I could have done better than that. And thankfully it worked out. Jameis Winston and Nick Chubb ended up saving the Browns. And guess what? It's the only time all year I've been able to talk about them with a smile. So that's why we led the show with the Cleveland Browns, because it's such a rare occurrence. The Cleveland Cavaliers, on the other hand, you know what's a rare occurrence with them? Losing. They've lost one game. 16-1. They lost one game, as you know, on the floor of the defending champion Boston Celtics, and that game had all the makings for a blowout. The Celtics could not miss on threes in the first half. You probably know this already. And the Cavs fell down by 21 and ended up losing by a basket. Just a magnificent. And people always say, oh, it's a moral victory. Well, we don't believe in those here on Hoops Wire Live on 330 to go. But the way they battled back, I thought, was a good sign. And that loss, they actually played better than some of their wins. So there was stuff to take away from that. And of course, the next night they came back to Cleveland, blew out what's left of the New Orleans Pelicans, and there were some promising signs there. This is the Cavs. Nobody had played when they were 16-1, and which they are now if you're watching this live. Nobody had played as many games as they had. They played 17 games in 29 days. That was the most in the NBA. And yet they walked away with a 16-1 record. They finally got the first 3-day break, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, before their next game. Sunday, come home, they stay home, play the Toronto Raptors. So this has been a very nice break for them, a needed break. I asked Kenny Atkinson, I said, you finally got a break here. I guess that's not a question, but I threw a question in there. And he joked he was going to go to Florida for these 3 days. So the Cavs have this nice break. They played Wednesday against the Pelicans. They actually did not even practice Thursday. They're not practicing today. Kenny Atkinson said, no practice. Don't want the guys, if they want to come in the gym and shoot around or something, that's fine. But we're not doing any kind of practice until Saturday, the day before the game. So that's the good news. The Cavs are 16-1 again and really have a fairly good, favorable schedule coming up here. Not that any game in the NBA is ever easy because these are all NBA players, but, Toronto at home, and the Cavs have 6 of 7 at home coming up. One of those games, let me tell you, they got Toronto at home, Atlanta at home, at Atlanta, and then guess who comes to town a week from Sunday? The Boston Celtics. So that's going to be obviously a tough one. And then you've also got the Denver Nuggets in there as well, and the Washington Wizards at home, which should be a cakewalk. But, again, I look at this and I'm like, the Cavs could win their next 3 before they play the Celtics again and be 19-1, So I think most people would take that. I haven't been able to find out who else has started 16-1 in the NBA history, but by the time this next show rolls around next week, and the Cavs are 3 more games, say 19-1. If they're 19-1 or 18-2, I'll be able to tell you the best starts after 20 games, because that's all the NBA lists. At least that's all they send to me. All right, so why are the Cavaliers winning so much? Kind of discussed this last week, giving people player grades, but let's just break it down real quickly here in terms of who's doing what. Donovan Mitchell, same guy, being fantastic. Really has, in that Boston game, and that's why you have a superstar to kind of single-handedly, when nothing else is working. We saw Darius Garland in that game, right? 3 of 21 from the field. And I got some things on, Twitter or Facebook or whatever. He's a fraud, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, come on. The guy, it was a huge reason behind 15-0. He had a bad game in Boston. Boston has the 2 best defensive guards in the NBA in Derek White and Drew Holiday. And their whole defensive strategy every game, it's not just the Cavs, take out the opposing point guard. Be physical with them, push them around, make the refs make a call, which in Boston they're not going to do, and they didn't. And, look, Darius missed some wide open shots he normally makes. He was shooting a lot of tough shots, runners. They really removed him from the game. But I have no doubts about Darius Garland. He's had a magnificent season, and he just struggled that game. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And guess what? People have asked me, Craig Porter Jr. played so great in that game against the Celtics. And they said, well, why did they play Garland at the end and not Craig Porter Jr.? And here's the thing. You wanted to win that game. At the same time, you wanted Darius Garland. First of all, if you're Kenny Atkinson, you're thinking Darius Garland will get out of this. He's going to make one of these shots, which he never did. The second thing you're thinking is, what's more important probably than winning this game in Boston right now is getting Darius Garland this type of experience in, enemy territory in a big game with it close and him struggling. To show that the coach still believes in you in those situations, that's big. And that's why the Cavs are winning games. That's why, even though they lost that game, it's because Kenny Atkinson is showing the players, you know what? I believe in you. You're going to get it done. The next night, Darius Garland didn't play. Sore groin. It was no big deal. Kenny Atkinson said it was a collaborative thing between Darius and the team and us. Hey, let's sit you out, get you some rest after that tough game in Boston. So nothing to be concerned about there. It was more like a rest game, but I think the Cavs had to list an injury because they already had Donovan Mitchell rest one game. So, in that game, obviously, Jalen Tyson, the rookie, who hasn't played all year, steps right in, has a really nice night. 14 points, 8 rebounds. 11 rebounds, I think, and 7 assists. Came real close to a triple-double. And, Jalen Tyson steps in the starting lineup. What's so interesting is Sam Merrill, the night before, started in Boston and had missed the previous 3 games with a sore ankle. And then he steps in, and, oh, by the way, you're starting against the Celtics in Boston, Sam. And then his ankle was so sore he had to sit out again the next day. So these are the kind of revolving door that the Cavs have had, and they haven't skipped a beat. They really haven't. I mean, to come within a basket of beating Boston in Boston without Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, and obviously Max Strus, who has yet to play this year. I mean, those are your 3. Okoro, LeVert, and Wade are your 3 options to start at small forward with Strus out. And all 3 of them were out. So, obviously, the Celtics were missing Kristaps Porzingis, who hasn't played this year either. But, Evan Mobley, after that game against Boston, said it best. He's like, we could have won this game. A tweak here or there in the first half, we should have won. He said, to me, it shows me that we come into Boston, play this way, have them on the ropes in a game they should have blown us out. He's like, I think we're elite. That was Evan Mobley's words. And I can tell you, as somebody who's in the locker room after every home game, who interviews the players and talks to players a lot, Evan Mobley, while one of the nicest people in the NBA I've ever covered, does not come out and make strong statements very often. In fact, I was stunned to hear him say that because it's Evan Mobley. Donovan Mitchell, yeah, he's going to come out and say, look, we're fine, we're great, we're awesome. Evan Mobley's normally very by the book, quiet, very quiet guy, doesn't smile a whole lot. When you get a smile out of Evan Mobley, you know what you said must have been really, really funny. Because he's just a quiet, reserved, laid-back guy. So for him to come out and say after the Celtics game, we believe we're elite, well, I believe he really thinks that. Because, again, that's not a guy who makes strong statements. So, why are guys like Jalen Tyson stepping in? Craig Porter Jr., who played magnificent again in Boston. Ty Jerome, who had 22nd quarter points against the Pelicans, or what's left of the Pelicans the other night. By the way, here's where Sam Amico goes off on his random tangent. David Griffin, who was the general manager of the Cavs in 2016 when they won the championship, was the architect of that team. And he's now the head of basketball operations for the New Orleans Pelicans. And the Pelicans, in the game against the Cavs, and this is kind of the way it's been all season, they've had so many injuries, their top 8 scorers were out against Cavs. And which I thought the guys playing for the Pelicans played hard, but I also thought, these guys probably finished 500 in the minor leagues. They probably, if they played 22 games at this point, they'd probably be 11-11 in the minors. But anyway, my whole point in that was that, we saw these guys step in like Ty Jerome, who's been magnificent. Just what a find, the playing, I said this last week, playing kind of that Ricky Rubio role that he was playing last week. Or that I said last week that, kind of the guy who comes off the bench and gives you a spark. Ty Jerome's been fantastic. Jalen Tyson comes in, almost gets a triple-double. Jared Allen against the Pelicans. We've suddenly stopped talking about Jared Allen because he's had, a couple of quiet games. Against the Pelicans, 7 of 7 from the field. Okay? Big block shots. And he's been good. So I think what I'm getting at there is, how are all these guys coming in and contributing when there's these injuries? Okoro, LeVert, Merrill, and Wade, and I'll update you on those injuries in a second. But it's really the system. It's the system that Kenny Atkinson has put in place gives everybody an opportunity to do very well statistically. And Kenny Atkinson calls it shot quality. It's an actual stat. And he said, I keep track of our shot quality. And are we getting good shots? Are we getting good looks at the basket? That's what we want. And he said, and I think that it's super high right now, like our shot quality. And that's so important in the NBA. Are we getting not only good looks and open looks at the basket, but are we making that extra pass to get somebody else a good look, to keep them happy, get them their shots, and make winning plays? That's what it's all about. So that's why you can plug and play these guys like Jalen Tyson or Craig Porter Jr., Ty Jerome's having a career year. George Niang has never looked so good in a Cavs uniform. And by the way, I was in the locker room the other night. George Niang got into a little tussle with one of the Pelicans, a guy named Jamal Cain, who I cover the entire NBA, and I've no offense to Jamal, I've never heard of him. which is just fine because he's never heard of me either, I'm sure. So we're aligned there. But George got into a little scrap with him. They got face to face and were kind of jawing at each other, and they had to be separated. Tristan Thompson came in to separate them. And after the game, I walk up to George, just say hello, start talking to him, start interviewing him about the game. And a few other reporters come over and huddle around him. And Donovan Mitchell walks by. And Donovan Mitchell, let me tell you, is the king of when reporters are gathered around a player or at a press conference of coming in and watching and sometimes asking questions as if he's a member of the media. So we're sitting there interviewing George Niang, and Donovan Mitchell walks up and he goes, "Hey, ask him why he tried to fight that dude." And George just shook his head and he's like, I don't even remember that. Just ignore him. And, so we were interviewing Ty Jerome after that game because he had 29 points, career high, 27 in the first half, which was a career high at that point. He only had 29 because they didn't need him for the final 2 quarters against the Pelicans. But we're sitting there interviewing Ty Jerome around his locker, and I look over my shoulder because somebody's standing real close, breathing on my neck, and I'm like, what on earth? This reporter needs to step off, right? Well, that reporter was none other than Donovan Mitchell, and he was just sitting there making faces at Ty Jerome while he's answering questions and just having a good time. So they're having fun, and that's a huge key to everything they're doing is the belief, enjoyment. When you're 16-1, you're having a great time, right? So I think that they'll be able to extend this streak, on the Full Court Cleveland show with Boobie Gibson that we do on FanDuel Sports Network TV. We were talking about, I totally lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? We were talking about, why it's so important to have not just belief in each other, but fun. And we could clearly see that with this team. They're having a great time. They all get along very well. Nobody's complaining about lack of shots, lack of playing time. Those things are usually can run rampant in a locker room, even when you're, say, 10-7 instead of 16-1. Even when you're still winning, sometimes you can get those little hiccups in there where it's not great. But one guy we never mentioned in any of these shows, and I really haven't mentioned him in any of my columns on HoopsWire, is Kobe Altman, and how much he's done to not only get this roster to fit, but hire the right coach for it. And not to mention the fact that he also, kind of stuck with the same guys, right? I mean, we were all after the season like, why aren't they making a move? Why isn't Kobe Altman doing anything? And familiarity with them has really paid off. So those are big things. The other thing we were talking about on the show on Full Court Cleveland, now I remember, it only takes me, I just need like 5 minutes to catch up with myself. Because people have told me, 2 people have told me this and they don't even know each other. They said, it's like a one-man Disneyland in there. And it really is. Although I don't know that it's always as exciting. But, here we are. You're coming along for the ride. I hope you enjoy it and don't fall off. Anyway, so we were talking about, can the Cavs do 73-9? What would they have to be? I actually went through their schedule all the way up to 50 games. And, this is saying that there's no injuries or no major things, or they're able to stay healthy. They're able to continue to plug and play guys successfully like they have been. I don't think they're getting to 73-9. I don't think that will ever be matched. That is really tough. And you know what? Who cares? That 73-9 Warriors team, guess what? Didn't win a championship. We know that. They blew a 3-1 lead against Cleveland Cavaliers. And I went through the first 50 games and because I need to get out more. So I actually read the schedule and looked at the schedule, and it said, in my mind, I see 42-8 there. And that's assuming they get some big wins on the road on the West Coast trip. So if you look at 42-8, if I'm close to correct, to me, that's the ceiling after 50 games. I think it's possible if they keep playing like this. That's possible. But that's only 50 games. They'd have 32 left, and then they'd only have to lose one of those final 32. And I don't want them to do that. I think most Cavs fans wouldn't either. It's like, you know what? Get your losses out of the way in the regular season. Just the key is to keep playing like you've been playing and be able to plug and play guys as successfully as you've done. And I think a big part of that truly is the system that they're using, the belief they have in that system, and the shot quality. They're all going to defend. Everybody on this team is locked in defensively 80% of the time. In the NBA, 80% of the time will cut it in the regular season. Now in the playoffs, you got to do it 100%. Listen, I've been doing this for 217 years, I think is the count now. But I've seen teams, just mail it in defensively in the regular season. Not every game, but a lot of games. Then all of a sudden, LeBron comes to town and they're like super locked in. This team is always locked in defensively. And that's what you got to do in the playoffs. So they've already started playing playoff basketball. So to me, what you want to see with them is, are they as efficient offensively? And they certainly not only are efficient offensively, they're through the roof. So, it really comes down to that shot quality. Take a look at what kind of shots the Cavs are getting. Are the shooters getting the ball in their shooting pockets and all that kind of stuff? That is way too smart for me, even for a guy who's been doing this for 217 years. So I think the big takeaway here is, is this real? Yes, absolutely. And I think it's the way they've been playing and the style they've been playing that has made this seem real. Not just, this guy's, Donovan Mitchell's great. Darius Garland, 15 out of the 16 games he's played has been fantastic. Evan Mobley's on the rise. Jared Allen has been Jared Allen, which is all you want from him. He's had those games where he's just massive. There's other games where he's just okay. But there's some games where he's massive. And that's Jared Allen. That's his whole career. And that's fine. That's what the Cavs want from him. Very underrated, unsung guy, Jared Allen. Ty Jerome, career year. George Niang, I don't know about a career year, but definitely his best stretch of 17 games with the Cavaliers. So anyway, Isaac Okoro, I saw him walking around the locker room after he had to exit that game with the injured ankle, which was ruled a sprain. He looked fine. He was cracking jokes. Again, Isaac Okoro, mostly a serious guy. Everybody will tell you, if you ask, who goes at it hardest in practice? Everyone to a man, Isaac Okoro. He's just all business. So the fact he was walking around on this ankle and looked fine after the game, to me was a positive sign. I thought he was going to play against the Celtics, but look, again, 16 games in, at that point, you don't want to risk it, You don't want this to be a long-term thing. So I think Isaac Okoro will be back soon. That's my professional medical opinion. Karis LeVert, knee soreness, something he's been battling, I believe, since training camp. Again, nothing overly serious. They're taking looks at it and seeing when, when's a good time for him to go. One thing about this time of year is you want guys to be 100% when they play. I know that back in the old days, when I first started covering the NBA on Chisel and Granite, guys would play regardless through. And I can tell you this, Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, those guys all say, yeah, I'm fine, I want to play. It's really the teams and the medical staff that are saying, let's let this heal. So the players take a lot of flack in the NBA for wanting to hold out. Now, Joel Embiid deserves it because he came out and said, yeah, I'm going to sit out back-to-backs this year. And I'm like, okay, that's a bad look. But I can tell you with the Cavaliers, it's usually Kenny Atkinson will just come out and say it. It's front office, coaching staff, and we include the player, and say this is what we're going to do. And he said sometimes players will really, really fight it, but usually, they understand. They don't want to be hurt in in May when it means the most. So, people get it. So yeah, if you sit out these games, I think that's okay. So Okoro, LeVert, doesn't look like anything serious. Dean Wade, when I saw him get injured after that game, he was in a walking boot, and he was walking with a limp, but it did not look like a major limp. It didn't look like anything serious. But that looks like something that could keep him out a few weeks. Maybe. This is, again, my professional medical opinion, and just so you're aware, I've never been paid for my professional medical opinion or diagnosis. So, believe it or not, I'm so talented in so many areas, but the medical field is something that somehow escaped me. Yeah, so Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, ankle soreness, seems on and off. Was obviously good enough to play against the Celtics, then they rested him the next night. So none of those injuries, with the exception of Max Strus's injury at the start of the year, I would say are anything to be really concerned about long term. And Kenny Atkinson has expressed this. It's kind of a short-term thing. With Max Strus, he's progressing. That's what the answer we're getting. I think that he's going to be back soon. Thanksgiving is coming up, and I believe that Thanksgiving was kind of the time when Max Strus is going to be reevaluated for that major ankle injury that he suffered in the preseason. So it's going to be real interesting to me. And somebody asked me this the other day. How is, what's it going to be like when Max Strus is back? Because he's your starting small forward and he hasn't played, and they're 16-1. They went 15-0. And I said, look at everybody else. Look at Jalen Tyson, how he comes in and plays the way he plays. Tristan Thompson against the Pelicans, who, Kenny Atkinson has come out and said, Tristan Thompson has been the ultimate locker room leader. He has a championship ring. He has a positive attitude. He approaches every game like it's a title game. And he said those guys respect him. The rest of the team respects Tristan Thompson and his opinions and his coaching so much that, Kenny Atkinson said he's invaluable. Well, he finally got to play against the Pelicans, and he finished with 8 points and 10 rebounds. So he just came in and he's like, yeah, I'm still Tristan Thompson. There's a joke I have with Tristan Thompson that I can share on here. I don't think he'll care. And if he does, too bad. But so they moved Tristan's locker this year, and it's, at the end of the locker room's kind of like a horseshoe where the lockers are. And Tristan's is down at the very end. It was kind of in the middle before, kind of. And now it's at the very end. And right next to Tristan's locker is Sam Merrill's locker. And I know Tristan likes to say smart alecky things to me. For some reason, he singles me out. Probably because I'm the only guy left from when he first joined the team in 2011. So he and I have always had a good back and forth. And I said, well, they put Tristan's locker right next to Sam Merrill's. So I jokingly said at the beginning of the season to Tristan, I said, you know what? I'm happy that they put you next to the Christian this year, because I just think that's good. He just shook his head. He said some things, but most of it shook his head, laughed. We always have a good time. I've always appreciated Tristan Thompson. So the point is that he can always he will always give you that leadership and is really invaluable to have around. And he keeps things light. He doesn't let things get too, if there's one guy who understands that it's a long season and it's a marathon, it's a guy like Tristan Thompson who's been around forever. So I think I've just about covered everything. Let's see. Let me go back through. Browns win, which I only talked about for like 2 minutes. Should have been like an hour because I don't know where they go from here. Probably, my oldest boy off at college texts me and he watches every Browns game. Poor guy. I got him hooked, years ago when he was like 8, maybe even younger. And he's been a big Browns fan. And he texted me, he said, why do they play good randomly? Like once every 3 or 4 games. And I'm like, that's the Browns way, man. You should know that by now. It's once every 3 or 4 games, and then you go back in the tank. Okay? So I think they're at Denver next Monday night. Yeah. Monday Night Football, Browns. Not a good record. I will say this. The Steelers, to those of us who are Browns fans, are like Michigan to Ohio State fans, almost, right? The difference is I don't like the Steelers. I can't root for them. But I have so much respect for them. 3 coaches since I've been alive? 3 coaches! All right, I'm getting off track. But what a well-run, disciplined, smart, and Mike Tomlin could be coach of the year every year as far as I'm concerned. That roster is not that great, and yet they're 8-3. All right, well, you're probably all like, Amico, if you're not going to talk about the Cavs and their winning ways, then there's no reason for us to even pay any attention to you. Even then, I'm trying to talk you into paying attention to me. So, with that note, Cavaliers have a big week coming up in the sense that you've got a lot of lesser opponents, and Ty Jerome will say, beating teams who are supposed to be really bad and not playing lousy against them shows how mature you are as a team. So the Cavs are going out to show a lot of maturity this week. And then you end the week with the Boston Celtics back at home. So you want to form good habits. And you know what? It'd be really nice for them to beat Boston. It's going to be a bigger deal because they're going to be at home, and that's going to be a game. You don't want to be 18-2 with your only 2 losses to Boston, right? You'd almost be better losing in Atlanta. And somewhere like that. I saw that. It said if they're healthy and they move the ball along with their mentality, they're hard to beat in the NBA playoffs, and that is 100% correct. That's just it. Stay healthy, continue to stick to your principles, move the basketball, and defend like you've been defending. I don't care whether the Boston won the championship last year and has Kristaps Porzingis and all that back, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. From everything I've seen so far this year, the Cavs have every bit of hope as the Boston Celtics of getting out of the Eastern Conference. Now, small sample size, we're only a quarter of a way through the year. But I'm just going by what I've seen in that quarter of a year. There's no reason the Cavaliers cannot get to the finals. There's no reason they can't win a championship. There's none. There's none. Steve Kerr did it in his first year with the Golden State Warriors, right? 2014-15. Kenny Atkinson came from the Golden State Warriors. He's running the same system. If you went, people in Cleveland, rightfully so, do not like Draymond Green, the Warriors forward. And I promise I'm going to wrap this up in a second. But here's a point I wanted to add about. Well, guess what? Kenny Atkinson came from the Warriors, and guess what? Evan Mobley is Draymond Green. He's the same guy. He's having him play the same role. Go out there, shoot some threes, get defensive rebounds, dribble the ball up the floor, create offense, usually defend the opposing best front court player. Evan Mobley is the Cavs' Draymond Green in terms of style only, but Evan Mobley has like 5 inches in height on Draymond Green. But that's the role he's playing. Kenny Atkinson has brought that Warriors offense and that Warriors mindset to the Cavs. And that's why guys like George Niang, who usually frustrates people, Ty Jerome, who nobody really knew because of his injury last year, Karis LeVert, Sam Merrill, Dean Wade, we know the Donovan Mitchells are going to get it done. But that's why all these other guys are stepping up their games, because they're running this offense that's so efficient and has really led to easy shots and easy looks. So anyway, with all that in mind, I guess we'll do this again next week. Thanks so much for joining, and be a lot to talk about this season. A lot to talk about, a lot to be excited about. So it's not like the Browns where it's just one game. This is a whole season we got going on here with the Cavaliers. So with that in mind, we will wrap it up here and talk to you next week.